So what we have done is, as we said before, we've gathered the questions that we felt that would be of the highest service for everyone today. So I'm going to start with my first question that we found, and that is, Aaron, I feel that in my awakening journey, I've witnessed unity consciousness, but with recent events in my life, I'm having a hard time getting out of my head during meditation. I can't stop thinking while I'm trying to be in silence. I know that I am in my small self, but the pain is still there. It hurts tremendously and can't seem to stop it. Even knowing what I know, I try to feel through the pain and be in it. Maybe it's just too fresh, but how can I heal this and move back into oneness?
Yeah, back to the foundation, right? How do I know when I'm observing or giving energy to a thought? One of the things I'm really interested in is understanding enlightenment as a neurological condition that manifests once the nervous system is prepared for it. And there's, basically two ways we can prepare the nervous system for the state of enlightenment to manifest: masculine and feminine. Raja is the masculine approach of emptying out the mind, emptying out the self completely until there's the story of Shiva in the Hindu tradition of when Shiva was incarnated as a person 10,000 years ago or something. And Shiva was one who burnt up everything within himself through inner discrimination, meditation, inner silence, until every falsity, every attachment, every identity the mind had was destroyed in that awareness. And it was said that this being called Shiva created such a vacuum of emptiness inside himself, of voidness, you might say, that it actually caused a vacuum effect that blew open the doors to his third eye inward, because the pressure of that emptiness became so great. And then Shiva became awakened, an awakened being. And so that's the practice of self-examination, self-inquiry, is observing thoughts, movements of the mind. And the more we observe the movements of the mind, they become increasingly subtle. We move through one layer. Let's say we just started our spiritual practice. We came from a life of, drinking and debauchery and all that stuff, sex, drugs, rock and roll. And so the first thing we notice is we have this huge anger issue, maybe. That's the most obvious thing we need to deal with first. So we work on being aware of that. When that anger arises, part of me has to notice, here's the moment where the anger is arising. So let me stay aware of this anger. And more importantly, what it means to say that is, let me remain aware of what this anger wants me to do, right? Because the mind is urging the body to act out its state of consciousness. So until the observer, in a sense, steps in between the mind and the body and says, wait a minute, I don't need to do that action. I can just observe this energy and just let it do what it wants to do, but I'm not going to act it out, because when I act out the energy, I'm charging it up. When I do what anger wants me to do, cuss that person out, punch that guy in the face, punch a hole in my wall, whatever, then speaking of the neurology, our neurons are little points throughout our chakra network. And we have neurons that are negatively charged and positively charged based on the state of our mind and our quality of consciousness. So when a negative neuron is stimulated by some kind of experience, it shoots up a signal to the brain, which manifests as a thought of some kind. Oh, I hate that guy. I want to hurt that guy. And then if I give that thought attention, if I say yes to it, if I act it out, if I feel identified with it, this is my anger, I am feeling this anger, then the brain takes all that attention I gave and sends it back down to the neuron, and the neuron gets beefed up a little bit more. Over time, that neuron gets beefed up through all my attention and identifying with that negative habit. And it becomes a distortion, as the law of one calls it, literally a little psychic knot in my chakra network somewhere that needs to be dissolved through awareness or through energy work, which would be the feminine approach. So to come back around full circle to the question, how do I know if I'm observing a thought or a feeling, or if I'm, giving into it? If you're aware of a thought, then there will be a feeling of a little bit of space, or a gap is created. And you really can't know if you're aware until the moment it happens, because if you look back, you acted out whatever that thought said to do. You look back and go, was I ever aware of that? You're not going to be able to know, right? Because you were totally lost in the thought. So that's why people who are deeply, lost in ego consciousness, they don't even know that they are, right? They have no concept of what that means. They're like, what do you mean? I'm just being myself. This is me. I get angry. I get triggered. That's me getting triggered. There's no space between them and the mind or the body, the reactions that happen. So when you are aware of something, there will be even a very subtle or sometimes very large, almost like a feeling of empowerment of, aha, I caught this one. This thought passed by. It wanted me to grab onto it, get lost in that old story again, reminisce about how much better it was, whatever. And I caught it. I was aware of the thought and I said, that's okay. Just go ahead, dance your dance through the mind, but I'm not going to go into that story. I'm not going to act out what the feeling wants me to do. Because it's when I get lost in the story or when I act out the emotion that I know I wasn't aware of it, right? I was energetically tied to that pattern and it swept me away. But if I can be aware after the fact and go, it got me that time. I didn't have enough awareness to catch it yet. Even that's a victory, right? Even that is the sign that space has been created. So the next time that pattern, that neuron fires, there will be a little more space to catch it a little bit sooner and a little bit sooner. And over time, that pattern becomes so distant from you that you actually see it coming almost from a mile away. You can feel the energy rising in the body before the thought even manifests, because that's the weakness, you might say, of the ego or the mind, is that it is predictable, it is repeatable, it's the same story on a loop. So the more you learn about yourself, the state of your mind, the traumas, the habits, the stories the mind likes, the more awareness you cultivate and the easier it is to allow those movements to just happen. Like we talked about in the meditation, just allow it to be as it is, but I'm not going to act it out and identify with it. When you're feeling pain, painful emotion, this is why it's so helpful to understand the science of how these things happen. When you're feeling that emotion, first understand that's not actually your feeling. You are actually feeling what the neuron feels, right? When I was traumatized in the past, as we know the way traumas work, my mind will store all of that data because it's seen to be like extraordinarily important. When I'm in pain, when something hurts me, when something's scary, that could be a threat to my survival. So survival mind says, let me grab that memory and just keep it in here safe so that the next time a stimulus happens and you feel that certain way, I can quickly remind you of how dangerous it is and you can run away from that experience, right? Nothing bad or evil's happening. Your mind is just trying to protect you, but it's innocent to the true nature of mind and emotions. All it knows is your perception, right? It doesn't know reality. The mind can't know reality. It can just react to your perception of reality. So when I feel something, I'm actually feeling remnants of the past, of data that was stored in my neurological network, in my chakras. So that's why we say when you feel a painful emotion, don't identify with it and call it my feeling. There is pain present. Yes, I am feeling something, but let's not be so quick to call it my feeling, right? Let's not assume things we can't know for certain. Because, for example, one person, two people can experience the exact same event, the exact same trauma can happen to both of them. But a more spiritually evolved person forgives and holds nothing against them and just moves on. And the spiritually unevolved person doesn't forgive, resents, and lives with that trauma for decades. So the same experience happened, but it was reacted to and related with very differently. Now, this person doesn't want to hold on to that pain. They don't enjoy the pain, but they don't have a choice, right? It seems to be stuck on them. So can I really call it mine? Because if I had control, if there was a button I could press, I would be like the other guy who could just forgive and move on and not define themselves by it. So let's not be in a rush to call anything mine. Let's just observe what's arising in this moment. There's pain arising in this moment. So just like you would do with a close friend or a loved one, What do we do when someone we love is hurting? When they're crying and they're sobbing, we put our arm around them. We give them our love. We support them. We hold space for them. We listen to them. We let them express what they're feeling. So why is it any different with the pain you feel inside your body, right? It's different because you call it my pain. That's what makes it become sticky in that sense. As soon as you identify and you attach to it, you label it as mine, then the mind defines you by it. And then there's guilt and shame, and I shouldn't feel this, and I wish I didn't feel this. So you can't have compassion for yourself when you're identified with your pain. Just let it be pain, energy, negatively polarized energy moving through the body. Don't call it something, right? Just be with it and listen to it. And that's what we call shadow work. When I listen to what the pain is telling me, I get really intimate with the pain, and I don't say, I wish I wasn't feeling you right now. That's not intimate. That's not loving. You wouldn't say that to your mom or your child or your best friend who was crying. You would let them feel it. Yeah. So you do that, and then suddenly the pain starts to speak to you intuitively, wordlessly. Intuitions will arise of, oh, this is an old remnant of my unworthiness, which I was sort of raised in my religious environment, taught me to feel unworthy of God's love, or whatever it might be. You'll start to get these impressions, and then you just forgive, and you just say, of course you feel that way. You had no choice but to feel that way. You were 5 years old. You were 10 years old. You didn't know any better. You hadn't learned that lesson yet. So it's okay that you hurt from that. And I'm going to be here with you while you hurt from it. And you just kind of give your energy body, that love. Now, let's go back to the neuron example. When that negatively charged neuron fires, I believe what actually happens is that a negatively charged neuron has a bunch of ions magnetically floating around the neuron. When the mind sends a signal down to trigger that neuron, it's called a depolarization current in neuroscience. The depolarization current hits the neuron opens up for about 2 milliseconds, and all those negatively charged ions flood into the neuron, and it goes poof, and it sends a signal back up to the brain. And then that signal is felt as depression or whatever the emotion is. And if I say, oh, it's my depression, the brain takes that power of the I am power, I am that depression, and it sends it back to the neuron, which amplifies it. So instead, in shadow work, we feel that pain, and we don't say, oh, I'm hurting, it's my depression, I suck, I'm a loser. Instead, we say, oh, I love you, I forgive you, I understand you. And what is that? That's positively polarized energy called love. So we now send love back down the neurological network into that neuron and infuse it with love, which depolarizes that neuron. So shadow work is the feminine approach, which can heal something in an instant. If you connect with it deeply enough, you can heal something in a flash. A decades-long trauma can be resolved in a moment. But you have to have the awareness first, right? The masculine principle needs to be there so that you're aware of, this is a repeating pattern. This is emotion trapped in my chakra network. It's a distortion in my chakras. So I need to feel this and allow this and let it be as it is, as we've been talking about. And then once it really feels safe to show itself to me, because I'm not fighting it anymore, then when it shows itself, I give it love and I say, you're beautiful, you're a perfect expression, there's nothing wrong with you. And negatively charged energy doesn't know what to do with that. In the light of that truth, it just can't resist it. Energy wants to be positively polarized, so it'll just reverse. And so it's really an art of masculine, feminine balance coming together when we talk about how do I move through painful feelings and emotions that may come up in meditation. Understanding the process is really helpful. And then it's just a practice. Just get used to feeling things, observing them, and giving them love, giving them forgiveness. Don't expect yourself to be an expert at that right away. It may take a year or more to practice that before you feel like you've got some real momentum going with it. You understand, you can connect with it. So, be patient with yourself.